part of the dilemma, I don't know where he goes from now. There aren't many southern states left. I just don't see that there's any chance he has of overcoming John McCain. So for all practical purposes, Tuesday, I think, settled the Republican side of the equation. Democratic side didn't settle anything, except I think we're in for a long, and Senator Sullivan might have a different take, but it looks like we're in for a long contest there. And I have to tell you, as a Republican, I kind of enjoy that. I like to watch a good fight, and I just soon it not be a Republican fight for a change. I think both candidates can come away feeling pretty good about that, and maybe feel disappointed. I think there was some media anticipation that Senator Obama was going to break through. He didn't do that, but if you think where he was a month ago, he came a long, long way. And what amazed me watching election night, and when they finally figured out the delegates, he did as well as she did, and also when the popular vote, he did almost as well as she did. Based off the media just kind of concentrating on California, you wouldn't have thought that. Of course, they also gave her Missouri before I went to sleep. It was a pretty tight race, and I think it's going to continue to be a tight race. I think Senator Obama has done an impressive job of kind of coming from nowhere against one of the most effective political machines in our time, and that's the Clintons, and really kind of play her even. And now whether he can win it in the end, I don't know. Senator Sullivan, I'm sure, will be able to tell us that. I have trouble enough understanding Republicans without trying to know for sure what Democrats are going to do. But again, that is an interesting race, and it's such an interesting race. I think the media dwells on it a lot more than it dwells on the Republican race, and that's part of the reason I think you see more people turning out in Democratic primaries around the country, because there's just a lot more attention. If you watch CNN on one of these primary nights, if you blink, you're going to miss what's going on the Republican side. I mean, they spend an awful lot of time, and that's their right, on the Obama-Clinton race, much more than they did on when we had all those people running, and even when we were down to 2 people. So it'll be interesting to watch how that goes. I do believe, now I'm going to kind of go in a little bit, what does this mean? I think for John McCain to wrap it up as soon as he can, and I think basically he has, that enables him to start thinking a little bit about November. I've said many times, and I think I've said it at this gathering, getting elected it's a 2-step dance. You got the primary and the general election, and there's not a lot of similarities in those races. And you got to be careful to win the primary that you don't kill your chances of winning the general election. Now, one of the strengths of John McCain, I mean, he doesn't pull his punches. I mean, he tells you what he thinks, and even if it's not popular. And I think in the end that's helped him a lot. I think Governor Romney's approach, which he seemed to change a lot, I don't think went over well. But what Senator McCain now can begin to do is begin also to look toward November and to work on broadening the base. Whereas on the Democratic side, they still got to concentrate just on those Democrats, or who's going to show up in a Democratic primary, and they're not able to broaden or to think toward November as soon as I think John McCain will be able to do. So I think that's a plus for the Republicans. Also, when you have a one-on-one primary battle versus a multi-member primary battle, it gets real personal. And you run the real risk, I think, of some permanent animosity, not so much between the candidates, between their supporters. It can make it harder to put that back together the longer that goes. And the longer it goes, the more tempers get frayed. I mean, you can be very diplomatic when you first start out. But about 6 months from now or later, you're tired, your supporters are tired, you say things, you do things that you probably wish you hadn't done. So that's a risk. Now, on the other side, it will keep the spotlight on the Democrats. If there's a race, that's what the media is going to cover. They're probably not going to walk around with John McCain and ask him for his philosophical thoughts. They're going to want to know where the fight is, and that will be in the Democratic primaries. So they will continue to get the spotlight, but I think you do run the risk, if you're the Democrats, that if that could end up causing some hurt feelings. Also for the Republicans with McCain, who has a history of being able to bring in independents and even some Democrats, I think he's in a much better position than Governor Romney or Governor Huckabee would be to win over some of those people who might get disenchanted with whoever does win, particularly if it's Senator Clinton is the nominee. I think if it's Senator Clinton, John McCain's ability to get independents is much stronger. If it's Barack Obama, who seems to do pretty well with independents too, that's going to make it a little tougher. And I might just go in, I like Barack Obama. In fact, I was telling Senator Sullivan I was having a discussion with my daughter and daughter-in-law who do not live in Illinois and who I have lost in this election to a Republican. But I was trying to suggest between the two candidates, a Democrat, that they ought to vote for Barack, mainly just we've got grandkids who would like to visit the White House someday, and I think I have a much better chance of getting in if Barack's there than if Senator Clinton's there. But saying that, and I think the world of him, and I think he's done a great job. I have to tell you, I'm for Senator Clinton because I'm a Republican, and I believe our best chance in the fall is to run against Senator Clinton. There is nobody who will unite the Republican Party more in November than Senator Clinton. Now, she's a very smart person, but she does have the impact of polarizing folks, of getting a lot of people that you would think might vote for a Democrat may not vote for her. And if you look at her votes, she does very well with the core Democrats. I don't think John McCain will get those core Democrats. She hasn't yet been able to do as well with the independents and some of the new voters as Barack Obama. I think John McCain has a chance of attracting some of those who maybe even voted in a Democratic primary in the general election if who they voted for in the Democratic primary is not there. Now, that could be wishful thinking, and, I'm a wishful thinking kind of guy when it comes to the Republican Party's chances. I will say this, that going into this election, it was my feeling it's kind of the Democrats to lose because American presidential politics is cyclical. Probably the most cyclical part of American politics is the presidential races. It just seems like every 8 years we change. Now, there's some exceptions, but usually it doesn't last more than 12, but it seems like 8 years it does happen. And so this is kind of the Democrats' turn. Things aren't going that well. President Bush isn't that popular. Now, when George Bush was able to win after Ronald Reagan was still pretty popular. Most times when a president's ending their second term, they're not that popular. And so going into this race, I felt it was the Democrats to lose. And I still think they have an advantage getting away from the candidates. If the candidates are McCain and Clinton, then I think even though the Democrats go in with an advantage, I think we Republicans have a much better chance. Senator Obama, it's a little unknown. I think it's going to be tough in Illinois. But nationwide, we don't know because he's never been tested. He's been tested in the primaries, and that's a pretty good indication, but it's not like the general election. And if you're the nominee, and the scrutiny is really on you, just how he might perform. I suspect he might perform very well, but we don't know that. We're not as sure about him as we are Clinton or McCain because he hasn't been on the scene as long.